Supply chain management is about balancing supply and demand and trying to meet demand with as little supply as possible.
This is In the Loop. I'm Christian Bryant. During this pandemic, there's been no shortage of shortages. I mean, the image of empty shelves of toilet paper last year is still burned in all of our minds. But lately there have been other shortages, like lumber, bikes, even shipping containers. Of course, with shipping containers, a shortage of these snowballs into a shortage of other things. Because let's be honest, I know I did an unhealthy amount of online shopping during the quarantine, but I know I'm not alone, right? That kind of overconsumption is one factor in recent shortages. Shipping capacity and the workforce to support it just hasn't kept up with all of the pandemic-induced purchases around the world. As Americans continued to stay home, they found time to invest in home improvement projects, which increased the demand and price of lumber. This shortage made the cost of new homes skyrocket by adding an additional $36,000 to the price tag, making our current housing crisis even worse. Also, have you tried looking for a bike lately? Or getting parts to repair yours? You might not be able to get a hold of either for months or even longer. During the pandemic, people wanted to get outside and get active while staying socially distanced. In 2020, the US imported $1.4 billion worth of bikes, up $200 million from 2019. A Bike Trade magazine says the shortage will probably last until mid-2022. And in recent weeks, we're seeing shortages of ketchup, chlorine, chicken, Starbucks menu items. The list goes on. So why are all of these random items facing the same challenges? We asked a supply chain expert.
I think a lot of companies have just decided that, hey, we're seeing a surge in demand. Let's soak up what demand we can and try to stretch out the capacity we have, but feeling that it doesn't make sense for them to make an investment today that could take 5 years to pay off and may only be beneficial, until things settle down, say in the spring of next year. Supply chain management is about balancing supply and demand and trying to meet demand with as little supply as possible. And that's really where a lot of the rub is happening right now.
We might not know when things will be back to normal, and obviously a lot of the supply chain decisions are out of our hands. So it's only natural for us consumers to ask how we're supposed to navigate shortages until supply and demand evens out again.
I think the message of substitution is really key, that we may not find the specific item, the specific brand that we're looking for, but we're fortunate here in the US market anyway, that we can find ready substitutes for just about anything we're looking for. It just might mean, making some adjustments and getting comfortable with something that we've never tried before.
The US economy has bounced back to pre-pandemic levels. This is a pretty positive sign considering all of the Great Depression talk in 2020 prompted by pandemic issues like business closures and unemployment. But the growth is slow, and a more transmissible variant of COVID-19 is threatening to undo that progress. Newsy's Alex Miller has more.
The Delta variant isn't throwing a wrench into our economic recovery yet.
Forecasters need to basically embrace a high degree of humility right now because we just don't really have templates for this situation. We don't have a playbook we can take off the shelf.
The economy grew at a rate of 6.5% in the second quarter, the fastest since last fall, but still slower than many experts expected. Americans were getting their vaccines, stores were opening up, mask mandates were lifted. But with COVID cases once again on the rise, we could see the brakes on consumer spending if people start to stay home again and don't go back to working in person or to work at all.
We have this mismatch between the workers who are unemployed or essentially available to work, and then the demand for workers with a record more than 9 million job openings.
Mark Hamrick, an analyst at Bankrate.com, says employers are still seeing gaps in employment with people either changing industries or staying out of the workforce. But it's not just staying home from your local coffee shop that could hurt the economy. Support programs that have kept millions of Americans afloat are starting to expire. The eviction moratorium ended, leaving more than 11 million people who are currently late on rent at the mercy of their landlords. Some say they're taking their tenants to court.
I've had one apartment director who has told me that he manages multiple units in different complexes. He's told me he's bringing in, just him alone, over 300.
Many states have already nixed enhanced unemployment benefits, but those who haven't will see those go away on Labor Day, and student loan moratoriums end at the end of September.
They may not be, quote unquote, significant from a macroeconomic sense, but they're clearly significant with respect to essentially the misery that they can cause on the part of people.
The Federal Reserve acknowledged the path of the economy continues to depend on the course of the virus, but says it will continue to use its tools, including not raising inflation rates, to continue strengthening the economy. In New York City, Alex Miller, Newsy.
All right, so the economy is in a sensitive place right now. I mean, same. But another thing that wouldn't help, aside from another wave of infections from the Delta variant, would be the federal government running out of money. Congress is considering raising the debt ceiling to keep that from happening. Newsy's Stephanie Liebergen breaks it down for us.
The national debt limit is again up for debate on Capitol Hill. So what exactly is it?
Congress puts a limit on how much can be borrowed in total from the U.S. government, how much total debt they can have. And the debt ceiling is that limit. It's an amount of borrowing we cannot breach.
The debt limit, or debt ceiling, is a fixed number, which means from time to time, Congress needs to vote to raise or suspend it. If that doesn't happen, the U.S. would default on its debt or other financial obligations, and that could have significant impacts not only in the U.S., but around the world.
It's unclear exactly how bad it would be because it's never really happened before, but experts warn it could cause a global financial crisis.
Congress has to raise the debt limit. This should not be a negotiable. You don't play chicken with the full faith and credit of the U.S. government.
After being suspended for 2 years, the debt limit is currently $28.5 trillion. We've already passed the August 1st, 2021 deadline for Congress to raise that limit. So Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen says she's taking extraordinary measures to ensure the country doesn't default on its debt. History shows those measures can help bridge the gap for up to a couple months, but it's unclear how long they'll last this time around. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell has come out against raising the debt ceiling, citing recent Democrat-led spending plans. But hitting the debt limit doesn't stop Congress from spending more money.
The borrowing is put into effect when we cut those taxes or when we increase that spending program or when we refuse to finance, our current growing entitlement programs.
So the debt limit is not, should we spend more money? The debt limit is, should we pay for the, spending we already did?
That's exactly right. The debt limit is, should we pay for the spending we already agreed to?
Senator Tim Kaine, a member of the Senate Budget Committee, said he'd like to see Congress reform the debt limit, but that is a long-term goal.
I think what we need to do, and I hope we would do it in connection with the reconciliation bill, is just to do what past Congresses have done and increase the debt ceiling until we come up with the more effective reform.
Some of the reform possibilities include tying the debt limit to a share of the national economy, suspending it as long as the country's on a good fiscal path, or eliminating it altogether. Stephanie Liebergen, Newsy, Washington.
When you're back, we'll introduce you to a man with one of the most recognizable voices in Chicago sports.